So in this process, we also use dashboards, kind of where I left off. Okay. Something else that we use requests for is to schedule appointments. So our utilities division uses requests, the same request layer, to schedule meter exchange appointments, for example. So during busy times of year, they might see quite a few requests that need to be addressed in the field, and they need to go into people's homes. And with that comes the need for scheduling appointments with a resident or with a business owner. And we can get quite a few in any given day during those times of year. And due to the flexibility that Survey 123 offers, we decided to use that because it lent itself well to this, to giving the field staff a list to use and allowing them to organize it based on date and time, or making sure that it was manageable and conducive to meeting those appointment times in the field. And then once into an appointment, we were able to take advantage some of those cool tools that Survey 123 offers, like the barcode scanners, and that kind of eliminates the need for hand entering any of those serial numbers off meters, and also the conditional responses were really useful. Now that Field Maps has some of those enhancements, we've actually talked about migrating some of our applications into Field Maps, just because that was maybe some of the main reasons that we were using Survey 123 is to take advantage of those tools. But for scheduling needs, there really nothing has really beat the ability to send staff out with a list of appointments and being able to ensure that they're going to hit everything in the right order. So right now, I don't know if we'll see anything in the future changing for that one, but that's something that would be interesting to learn what other people are doing for scheduled tasks if they're using some of these applications. This particular workflow also includes a potential for reactive work activities to be done on specific assets. If field staff are out in the crew, or field staff are out in the field and they're needing to address a request that has been placed for, say, a hydrant's been hit, we have certain assets that are in GIS, and we might have activity tables associated to them or related to them, where we've implemented workflows to complete reactive work for those using field maps. We're able to address what needs to be addressed in those applications. So if a field staff is going to update a request, they're also able to update that asset's activity table when they're out there. And that's given us a lot of flexibility in the field. And once everything's been submitted, in turn, they can submit what they need to submit back to the office, and office supervisors or foremans are able to address any follow-up work that needs to happen. As is true with many workflows, the need for this information doesn't stop in the field. So that's where we've leveraged those dashboards so that we can tailor the views based on various end user needs, and we can offer essentially live reports and all the information that's collected using some of those applications like Survey 123 or Field Maps are distributed to the various work groups to meet their needs. So that's the end of my presentation. How am I doing on time?
Golden.
Okay. So if I have a little bit of time here, I am logged in on my phone and I'm going to do my best to do a live demo here. We have one workflow that Sarah Luda, our GIS specialist in streets, has put together, and she does a lot to manage a lot of the work that comes in. Some of it does initiate from requests. And let me see if I can get this to start broadcasting. Oh, good. It worked. Live demo mode. You never know what you're going to get. So one of the workflows starts with going into quick capture. In quick capture, we have a number of quick capture applications that are intended for field crews to use while they're in the field. And the benefit to that is they can be in their vehicle and they can use the buttons to identify a problem in the field. And then the thing I'll just emphasize here is that this again is the same source of data that is used when we're updating our survey to the public and somebody's maybe submitting a pothole issue in the field. This is the same data source that we're using here. So if a streets crew member is in the field and they want to identify a pothole, they can enter in their test. And in the background, this is where that power or Integromat, now Make, is triggering the address or the nearest address to be populated and backfilled in the same data. And once it's done, this one's actually set up where we need to send it. Now that it's sent back to the office, I can share my screen again. Sharing. Okay. So this is an example of one of our dashboards that we have set up. We have a streets dashboard collection, if you will. We've used the instant apps to create tabs of dashboards so that various needs can be met, various workflows in the field can be addressed, but this is our request dashboard. So in this case, we have our request dashboard are available for Josh, our streets foreman, to be able to review everything that's come in and anything that he needs to send out in the field as a work needed item. Or we also have an inbox for cross-department work. If there's work that needs to be addressed in utilities, but it's a joint effort between utilities and streets, we're able to pass that back and forth because utilities has a dashboard reading the same data, but filtered to their needs. So when that point was placed, we're able to go down here and see here it is. Oh, yes. So that particular quick capture application, Sarah just reminded me, when a point is placed, it's automatically set up to be logged under a work needed item, but in Streets Crew 1. And so here it is, 3501. This is my office. This is where we're sitting. So here's my test. And
one thing I'll say too about the buttons is that you can set each button to have different attributes. So we actually have, depending on which button those crews are pushing, they're actually going into different buckets, or crew 1, crew 2, crew 3, wherever it needs to go, wherever Josh has told us which crew is doing which task that day. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yes, so this one is automatically set up to go into Streets Crew 1. So that particular crew is here. If he wanted to change it, he could, and those all fall into the different buckets. In this case, I'm going to leave it here, but he can also change the status if he needs it to go to a different department. He can do that. So Now I'm going to jump back and step into the shoes of a field crew worker again who's on street crew 1 and show you what they see in the field.
So if this was a request that was coming in from our office staff, if somebody calls in our office and we're just creating a request in data link, that request would go into that review needed list that was on the dashboard. And then from that point, like if it's a pothole and Josh wants to assign it to crew 1, he can just click on that request, and in that survey that was in the lower left-hand corner, he can assign it to the appropriate crew. And when he submits it, then it'll fall into that streets crew 1 bucket, that list that was on the right side. And it'll also go into this field maps web map that we have for the crews. So we have a web map built for each of the different crews, like you can see here.
Sure.
So then he can just say, these 3 guys, today you guys are on crew 1, and they'll take the tablets out and they'll open up the crew 1 web map and see what work they have for the day, depending on what they're doing.
So I've got my streets crew 1 application open here, and this is where they can see where all the work is throughout town. If I'm sitting right on top of it, so it might be hard for me to grab it here, but this is where they can go in and note what needs to be done, if any comments have been added by the supervisor or whomever submitted the request. This is where they're able to edit that request and add in any pertinent information. But at the end of the day, they're going to mark it field complete. And this is something we have the field crews do in our streets division because it enables the field supervisor to have a final look at it before it's officially closed. And like Sarah said, this is given the flexibility to the supervising staff to be able to deploy different tasks to different groups. And we haven't necessarily adopted a per person application deployment, if that makes sense. They're not assigning work to a specific crewman. It's a field crew typically. And that has worked well for us. Although we've explored other options with that too. So when I refresh this, you can see the same dashboard is coming up. And this pothole will fall in line somewhere here. I don't know how it's sorted, but there it is. Oop. And there it is. So now that I marked it field complete, it's ready for Josh to go in and complete it, or if he feels like there's more work that needs to be done, it can go back into the work needed bucket. So that's sort of an overview of a typical life cycle of a request at Eagan. And there's many different ways that we've been able to configure the Esri apps in particular because they're pretty flexible. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know how others leverage some of these applications too. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Leah. I asked, I've seen Eagan's demos at the state conference before, so I asked if they'd be interested in doing that, just because, as you can see, they've got quite a robust field to office workflow set up. So obviously I'd love to open it up for other people to ask questions, but I'm going to go ahead and start with the hard question, which has nothing to do with the technology, but wondering if you have, we don't need the full answer, but maybe just overall, like, what does the journey look like for you to get everybody who's not a GIS person to drink the Kool-Aid and actually like sign on with using GIS this heavily to manage field work.
Yeah, I will let Sarah and Tammy chime in too, but I would say one of the biggest things we've had is a supportive management team, and particularly in public works, I think the desire was there to adopt some of the new technology, but also some of it just came out of a need for something to get out in the field with. And really, Esri's Collector app is what kind of opened the door there. I think their ability to add on a related record opened everything up to allow for those activity records. And then from there, we kind of piggybacked off that, although we were doing a lot of it in other areas too, but that and the dashboards have allowed that. And we've been fortunate that they support training and new technologies. But I know Sarah can speak to some of the challenges that come along the way with implementing some of this to field staff, and I'm sure others can too. But
Yeah, I can speak a little bit in regards to getting our field staff on board. I mean, it's been a collection. We've been doing it for quite a few years now, having them use the apps first in Collector and now in Field Maps. And as I'm seeing that demo and the fields popping up and everything, I'm thinking, oh, they've made so many improvements using forms and field maps. I can do so much more to make it cleaner. So I clearly have more work to do to keep this going, but that's the way with all the field applications, that they're always constantly improving and coming up with new ways to make it just a clean interface for our staff. But we have had honestly quite a bit of turnover over the last 10 years with a lot of retirements, and that was part of it. A lot of the staff that was more used to using technology was obviously more on board with using the tablets to begin with. So they've kind of helped the rest of the staff adopt it as they went along, and as new staff has come in, they've been really willing to try it out. I will have to say, the first time I showed them the quick capture app, it was pretty funny because it's literally, you just push a button. You don't even have to add details. Some of them don't even ask you for details. We only have a picture on one of them. So I was getting all ready for my training in the back room with the crews, and I said, okay, here we go. If you see a pothole, hit this. And they're like, that's it? It's like, yes, that's literally all you have to do. So just being accessible to them. Our offices here are at the maintenance facility, which is really helpful because when they have problems or when they run into issues, they can come right to my desk and get things resolved right away rather than having to go up to City Hall and make it part of their whole day. You know, they can stop in at lunch and stop in the afternoon. So that's helped a lot to make them feel more confident. But it's been a while. I mean, we've been doing it for a few years, so it was definitely a process to start with.
And if I may add it, not to drag it on the time here, but you know, I've been around here for a long time, so I've seen kind of the transition of, you know, paper maps to now we're in, you know, totally mobile in some cases. But yes, like Leah mentioned, the management staff, and Sarah mentioned that as well, being supportive has been really helpful. We also have sort of a unique setup in Eagan where we have a lot of people scattered throughout, mainly in public works throughout the city, who are kind of focused on using GIS in one department or one division. What I found is it's been really helpful to have those subject matter experts who know what they're doing and what they want, or what the managers or supervisors want. It's really integral in the whole process because as GIS staff, you know, we can implement the technology. I think if we don't know how to do it, we can figure it out or find ways to do things. But if you don't know what exactly they are looking for, or you know, what they're trying to accomplish, and sometimes they don't know either. But if you have a person who can speak both languages, it is really helpful to be able to kind of get them what they need and utilize the technology that we have already available to us, and we're already kind of paying for without having to add on more apps as well. And I've seen that more recently here at Eagan. kind of moving into public safety and fire. Now they're kind of getting more involved in these needs, and they have people on board too that are kind of understanding both sides of not necessarily all of the technology, but they can see they have a vision of kind of what they're looking for, and they know that GIS can help. So that's a really, really important piece of it.
Yep, that's a great point that I'm sure resonates with many of us, Tammy, of making sure we're connecting with the people who know the actual business needs. Cool. Open up. Anybody else have any questions for anybody from City of Eagan on what they just showed? Don't be shy. We're all here to share and collaborate.
Are you guys using GIS for your asset management, and do you do any like scheduled tasks or scheduled inspections, and how do you handle that if you do?
That's a really good question. I would say we kind of grapple with how to term this because GIS is probably our most used tool as far as asset management goes, or work management. And some of the Esri applications are our work management applications in the field. We do have others, but most of the routine work that's done is just, filtered into or integrated into our GIS data, and we use that to be able to send it out in the field with these applications, and then related activity tables are used for that. So that's, as far as the scheduled work goes, that's what we're doing. We do have WinCan for televising with sanitary, and soon we're going to do more with storm using WinCan. I know our hydrant maintenance is all maintained in activity tables through GIS and some of those applications. And there's in pavement management, we use Icon, which is another asset management software that is integrated with our GIS data as much as we can. And we just moved signs out of Icon into GIS. They were always sort of in GIS, but they're in GIS completely now. We're not using Icon to manage that anymore. I'm probably missing a lot of other things. As far as asset management goes with long-term planning, we have a few efforts around the city, and Robin Drucker is on this call as well. She's our asset management coordinator at the city, and she has a lot of efforts in just trying to establish some condition ratings, because right now we don't do a lot of condition ratings with our work management and inspection type stuff. So I don't know, Robin, if you have anything to speak to.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, to kind of piggyback on that, we use GIS as sort of the common language of a lot of our asset management efforts. So like Leah mentioned, we do have a lot of other tools that might be used for more specific things. But in terms of what you might think of as a traditional asset management system, we really rely heavily on GIS to accomplish that. And in terms of like scheduled work or things like that, I don't know about everybody else, but my experience trying to deal with calendars and dates in GIS has been unamazing. So we still tend to rely a lot on just remembering what our like annual practices are and things like that. But we still do the work, log the work, all of that kind of stuff using GIS, using our field apps, all of that kind of stuff. So does that kind of address that question?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.